Welcome back to World Chats. This week we're heading onto the trails for a deep dive into the life of one of Australia's most iconic, well-known, happiest and lovable trail runners. Winner of multiple ultra trail events from the UTA here in Australia to Ultra Trail Cape Town in South Africa and climbing up the top 10 slowly but surely at the most iconic of the lot, UTMB in France. She's recently diversified her portfolio of what's possible, entering the Ironman series first in WA and then qualifying at her first attempt for Ironman Kona. Welcome to the show, Lucy Bartholomew.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Where do we find you today?
Yes, home, which is kind of the unconventional answer for me these days, but home in Victoria with my dad and my dog, and nowhere else I'd rather be right now.
You travel a lot. I mean, I have a travel company, it's pop around the planet and stuff, but you are, is it nice? Is it always good to come back? I mean, there's nothing like coming home. Does it feel like it's a reset? Does it feel like it's just your grounding space?
Yeah, it just feels familiar. It feels easy. I think I spend a lot of time over in France and somewhere where it's hard for me to communicate. And so to come home and speak the same language, to know where to get my good coffee, to take my dog to do the run that I know will take an hour, it's just that little less thinking that I really appreciate it when I come home.
It's such a huge part of your life. I mean, I've followed you for a long, long time now. I think I bumped into you for the first time at the Big Red Run in the middle of the Australian outback. And I reckon it was 2012. And I've sort of just followed, out of curiosity, the journey before the fame sort of came with it. So to see that relationship with dad, the relationship with the dog, the relationship with home is so pivotal to who you are. That's the honest, authentic Lucy, isn't it?
Yeah, for someone like yourself to get that kind of start getting on at ground floor, as I would call it, and being there for the whole journey, that's just, you've seen me grow up and evolve. And, I was a teenager and now I'm 29. I'm going to be 30 this year.
I know you're going to be fair. You're going to have a big 3-0 coming. Does that fill you with trepidation or is that opportunity?
It's opportunity to me. Yeah. I think it's like the prime time as an athlete, as a human. And I feel like I've righted a lot of the wrongs that I did in my 20s. And so I think I can come to 30 full force.
I think we've got very opposing what wrongs we maybe did in our 20s. I grew up in the south of England, went to London for my weekends and then found trail running. And I think you've just grown through trail running, probably very different. And we're at a very different space in life right now. I've just ticked over to my 50th year as well. But the trails are still that opportunity to disconnect, to not get distracted by anything else in the world and just be in the moment. Do you still find being in the moment is possible or is it always about training?
I think it is possible. And I think that's probably one of the things I've had to realize is at some point you have to turn it off. And I think I just got so used to it, became my identity, it became my job. It was like I was getting better, I was traveling more, I was racing more, the races were getting bigger, and it was just kind of like more, and the snowball was growing. I think I found COVID really was like a really important time for me, as hard as that is to say for the world, because it gave me a grounding of being like, this isn't sustainable what you're doing. And out of that, I found triathlon and I found other sports. And I realized that, yes, I love running. And yes, I've crafted myself to be an ultra runner, but I love just moving my body and being outside. I love sport and competition, and those are all ingredients. They're not the final product. And I think that now I can kind of like go all in on UTMB and then I can go holiday and surf and walk and chill out and eat my way around France. And then I can come home and then I can put my head back down. And it's like ebbs and flows and little waves, which feels far more sustainable.
I suppose it's almost one of those dangers, isn't it? You always hear about young athlete burnout, whether it's in tennis, whether it's in Formula One. You always sort of see the young person that comes in, they're celebrated so much, they're put on the pedestal, and then there's almost the opportunity for failure is so great, but being able to have that enforced 2-year break in a way from being at the coalface and constantly having to slog away has probably only benefited you as a human.
Yeah. And for me, I was gaining momentum and then I went to Western States and I came third place, and I came third place in a body that I had battered into a shape and a size that I thought knew and had been told would succeed. It's the shape that we see on the magazine front covers and was all over social media. And that was obviously a huge success. It was a breakout race, but at some point something was going to break. And for me, it wasn't my body, it was my brain. I totally fell out of love with the sport. I call it I outran my love of running. And I then returned to Western States the next year. Everyone thought she came third on her first attempt. The only way is up. There's two
Mm.
places above that. I became my worst enemy before the race, in the training, and then during the race. From the first few steps, all I did was compare myself to the previous year, and I was a completely different person. And we had COVID shut it all down. And I just realized, like, Lucy, you can continue to go through these motions, but currently what you're doing is just banging your head on a brick wall. And people could see, like people like yourself and people that have seen my evolution and know my true spirit could see that there was like, it was starting to get a bit foggy. I was getting a bit kind of, yeah, you can just tell when someone's genuine and authentic, and I was just like, "Lights, camera, bitch, smile." Like, this is what you're known
What
for
you do,
now.
yes, yeah.
And that's a scary thing, and that's what made me really step back and be like, "Whoa, hang on, are you acting or are you actually being?" Having that time to reassess was super, super important for me to still be in the sport today.
Couldn't have really come at a better time in a way in terms of your age and your development, your growth and the speed that you were sort of going up through the rankings. It couldn't have come at a better time. The chance to diversify has given you lots of different hats, I suppose. So for an audience that are listening to this that might be hikers, they might be trail runners, they might be ocean paddlers. How do you describe yourself now? Not just an athlete, but what are you?
I feel like I always say my driving light is curiosity. I'm just a curious person. I want to try things. I'll always take a path, take a road. I will jump in and say yes because I you just don't know where things are going to lead to. Does it take you to a dead end? Does it take you to learn that you don't like that thing, or does it become something that you put in your quiver of things that you have tried and know how to do? And I think I'm just an outdoor enthusiast.
Yeah.
I will happily walk, sit, ride, swim, do anything that puts me into the environment because that's where I feel completely at ease, but also completely myself and free to move in any way.
Can you rewind back to those first, I suppose, I don't know, awkward or unfit runs when you were growing up? Did you ever go through that stage, or was school for you really an outlet of sport and that was your passion anyway?
Yeah, I've always been, I grew up with two brothers, and my dad is obviously super into sports as well. And so I was always active. I
Mm.
played all the team sports. I was definitely more driven socially. And running was considered the uncool thing. And
Yeah,
so I was like that. I was
probably
like cross
just.
country, like lame. I'll just walk at
Yeah.
the back. And then, I was in the school sports teams, and in the off season, everyone would kind of like try and run to try and get fit. And I just realized, man, I wish off season was all season. I loved the running. But yeah, I did the run walk thing. I think people think it was like this immediate,
Yeah. Yeah.
transcendence, but I'm a human and I went through the human journey of the body adapting, the brain adjusting, the realizing that it's not. I think what most people do is they take their experience of school cross country or athletics where you're just like redlining and it's awful and you feel pressure and eyes are watching you and teachers are judging you, and they take that and they're like, why would you choose to do that otherwise? And I'm like, but
Hmm.
it's not like that. It's especially in trail running, you're stepping over logs, you're weaving in and out of trees, you're like stopping at junctions to realize where to go. It's like very like you're ebbing and flowing all the time. It's not constant, unrelenting pushing. And I think once I slowed down enough to realize that, I sped up through the whole process
Nicely
and was
put.
able to slingshot forward in the distances pretty quickly.
Did you feel like there was a moment where it became not just about maintaining or gaining fitness? It was actually about this is who I am. This is what I'm now going to strive to be. Was there an event? Was there a run with dad? Was it at the end of a race? What was sort of those moments?
Yeah, I think it was mostly sharing it with dad. I at the time was trying to get my driver's license. So for the weekends, he'd make me drive to the trails to get the hours of driving in. We'd share that journey. I'd karaoke the whole way through it. We'd camp up the night, then we'd go for a run. And, at the time we weren't really tracking like miles. We were all just doing like hours. Dad was very like
Yeah.
old school marathoner.
Yeah.
And we'd go out and we'd run an hour out and then an hour, and we'd have our backpack and we'd have a sandwich, peanut butter and jam, and we'd stop at the waterfalls. We'd take terrible selfies on terrible quality phones, and then we'd come back to the tent, we'd go find some food, we'd get sleep the night, and then we'd head home, and that was my weekends. And all of those memories, I couldn't tell you how far we went, how fast, or anything, but there's like cafes or restaurants, or there's a song, or there's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
destination on a map, pin on a map that I'm like, "Oh, we camped there, that's right." And that's what it's about. That was my formative years, and that was driven purely by dad and I just being curious and unprepared.
So you go from a family, healthy, driven environment into then turning it into something where you decide you're going to enter a race. Now, obviously, there's rules and regs on some of these races, and at that age, you're pretty young. Was it having nice, dad having good words with the event organisers, going, "Hey, my daughter's doing pretty well. Do you mind if she sort of breaks the rules and comes in a bit early?" Or were you able to just go in there and just say, "Hey, I'm on my own credentials now. I reckon I can do this"? How does it work in the early days of breaking into the world?
Yeah, it's a completely different kind of space now. Like, I do believe that the era that I was living in 2012, it was unheard of. And so it was
Mm.
very uncomfortable for everybody when I would be
Yeah.
like, "Can I please come in and do the race?" I went up to Ultra Trail Australia, which is now the North, was the North
North
Face
Face, yeah,
100, now Ultra
yeah.
Trail Australia. And I watched my dad do it. And I just remember seeing Beth Cardelli and Brendan Davies and the OG old school runners just looking so graceful on these trails. Then I saw my dad, and he was just with a lot of people, head down, bum up, getting it done. But it was the back of the pack that I was like really struck by, just men and women of all different shapes, ages, sizes, colors, just getting amongst it and having the best time. And as a 14-year-old, I was just like, man, like if they can do it, why can't I? And so on the train back to Sydney Airport, I emailed every race director in the country and was like, "I want to run 100 Ks. Can you let me?" And the Surf Coast Century at the time, Sam Marfett, the race director, had heard of me. I'd been sniffing around his trail
Yeah.
series for a little bit. And so he kind of said, "Oh, let me take it to the team." And they came up with some obstacles for me to pass through before I could get to the start line. Things like a full medical check. I had to submit a nutrition plan. I said that I would run side by side with my dad the whole way.
Wow.
And
It's
there
really
was just
responsible, wasn't it?
it was, and so it should have been. I think at the time I was annoyed that I was getting treated differently for my age, and now I see people and I just think it's good to be like, "Okay, so why are you doing this? Are you healthy to be doing this?" We had a lot of question marks around us, and 100 Ks is no small feat. And so
No.
I think it was justified for people to be like, just, hesitant, cautious, curious, but ultimately to be able to be an example of a past runner that has been able to do that, complete it young, and still be in love and healthy 12 years on is a really positive thing, I think, for the sport.
I think that due diligence is really important, but those people that sort of leave the doorway ajar to go, "Hey, let's give this person the opportunity. Let's just support their passion. Let's give them that impetus to give it a go." I worked a little bit with Jess Watson, 16-year-old Jess Watson, to sail around the world, and the naysayers and the Mail newspaper and everybody just saying, irresponsible parents, why are they letting a child this age do things? We've got to have these inspirers, these adventurepreneurs, these pioneers in the sports to push and drive and inspire the olders of the world. It's only us that comes shrouded with these experiences, negative experiences, that go, they're definitely going to have the same as us. People like yourself and Jess are the ones that inspire. Yes, you get the headlines, but you're also the ones that other people will turn around and go, "I want to be in their shoes. I want to do what they do and follow in their footsteps." So I think it's a really important thing. You've got the people that give you the opportunity, but also you are so driven, you're not going to let anyone tell you no.
Well, I think that's so spot on. And I don't know if Jess had, I had my dad along with me for this whole
Uh,
journey. And through this, he copped, that criticism of like, has she got bad parents? Is she being forced to do this? She has an exercise addiction. She has an eating disorder. She's mentally unstable. This is going to like stunt her growth and whatever. And bless dad, he's hearing this narrative and this feedback, and he's starting to question it. And I remember him on the start line of this 100K saying, "Lucy, there's a lot of people that want to pull you out of this race because
mm,
they want to be right. They want to be like,
yeah.
'Told you so. I was right. She can't do this.'" And the thing was there was a group of schoolboys that were walking the 100Ks. And no one talked about that. I was like, look, I'll probably end up walking a lot of this as well. I might just try it a few times to take 2 feet off the ground. And I just felt that that was like unbalanced.
Unbalanced, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, dad was just, he was so pivotal in being like, you have to smile the whole way through this to show people you not only can do this, but you love doing this because people are going to be looking for you for little kind of moments to be like, yeah, see, she's cracking, take her out, pull her out.
Is that why you
So
smile for 99.99% of all your races? Is it just embedded in you from that
I
moment?
think it is. I think it is. Dad called it the middle finger to all the haters, and maybe that's exactly why I do it.
Yeah, good. Well, it's the best way to wear it. Do you know, and this is genuine. When I'm on the trail, when I'm having hard moments, when I am sitting and I'm going, have I got the motivation to get up and go for the run? I often go to your feed and I often just get a little bit of a kick in the arse to go, for God's sake, get up and do it.
Oh,
So you inspire on multiple levels, from the high-fiving girls on the edge of the trail to the people that just cannot be bothered 1 or 2 days in the week. So you really do motivate people with the smile and the positivity for it all.
well, thank you, Ben.
Trail and tarmac. You've never really ventured towards the tarmac so much, apart from, let's not go on to the Ironman yet, or the Iron People, as we should say. You've always been the trail one. Is that Dad and the brothers that sort of did that side of the sport?
So when I kind of joined into running, Dad was leaving the roads. He has been a marathon tarmac pounder for
Mm.
most of his life. He traveled the world. He's done 20 Melbourne marathons, as he will tell you upon
Wow.
meeting him. And he moved to trails because he was getting older and slower and was looking for kind of a different challenge. And I just fell straight into the trails and just loved it. And, it's not to say I don't despise the pavement. And that's what I think is really important. I know other trail runners who are like, hard surface is like no-go zone. I train a lot on roads and
Yeah.
bike paths where I live. It's what makes me appreciate when I go overseas to mountains and live in these trail meccas that I'm like, wow, this is incredible. But I've
Mm,
got to have what I have here in Victoria, which is kind of mundane and it's not sexy for social media, to then appreciate and I think to
yeah.
thrive because I'm just like blown away by how beautiful and easy it all comes when it's aesthetic and beautiful and mountains and everything.
It is. I'm really lucky. I mean, my backyard here is Currumbin Valley, and I've got these beautiful trails here. But I've earned the right to come down here. I was in Brisbane. I was pounding the river trail there, and then my go-to is to head down to the beach at Currumbin and do the flat, and you might gain 3 or 4 meters of elevation over a half marathon, and that's it. But then to get out there, the froth doesn't build up unless you have the normality, and the froth from this side of the road, the border track between Queensland and New South Wales, is just every day. It's snaky. There's bits that come out. There's big drops. There's slidey surfaces. That's the stuff that you love and you're passionate about. And I think that gives you the ability to do the disconnect, because I love running on the flat stuff, but I'm watching the watch and there's a notification coming in. I'm not really in the moment, and trail gives you that ability like nothing else on the planet, apart from maybe snorkeling or diving, where you're so immersed in the moment, nothing else matters.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. When I grew up in Melbourne City and I cut my teeth on running the Yarra Trail. There's big highways on each side. There's this little trail
Mm.
next to the Yarra River. It's like an oasis. It feels like everything because it's all you've got. But, to train for the mountains of when I went across to do Marathon de Mont Blanc as my first big international race, and it was the one that preceded signing with Solomon. I remember thinking, man, how am I supposed to compete in around Mont Blanc on European mountains when I'm running up and
Mm.
down Lyrebird
These
track
little
in the
things.
Dandenongs? And I remember my dad just like being like, Lucy, you can focus on what you don't have, or you can focus on what you do have. And I think it's right. If you can be a mad repeater and you can find beauty and sparks in the mundane, when it's given to you on a silver platter like the European Alps, and it's beautiful and it's just one big climb and it's blah blah blah, and you don't mentally not as taxing, you're a stronger athlete for it. And I think that there is a lot. Australia is hot, it's hard, everything wants to kill you. It's like it just makes you tough. And then you can go across to a mountain in Europe and you can stop at a refugio, you can pick up a Coca-Cola, you can have something to eat. There's water, there's streams, there's ice, there's whatever you need out there. I think that this is the place that can really breed the tough and really, really strong athletes.
I think that has a direct correlation to what I always think about the people that go and run their first London Marathon. So let's place London Marathon in the calendar year. It's in mid-April, okay? The 6 months which you might need to train up to do your first full marathon are through the thick of the European and the English winter. So I always see the people that get to their first finish line of a London Marathon have really cut their teeth in the worst conditions. It's short days, it's cold, it's windy, it's usually wet, and yet they get to that golden window of April, suddenly the sun comes out and it gets 15 degrees and they finish this race. They go through the hard stuff, and then from there you can sort of graduate onto the international races. Let's go and do New York, let's go and do a Tokyo, let's go and do a Cape Towns. The hard graft to do it, whether it's in the Dandenong Ranges, whether it's in London, whether it's in, you know, the equatorial region of Singapore in the sweat and the humidity. I think having a good grounding point then gives you the ability to sort of travel for the luxury of the travel and the experience and the beauty, and that lights the fire, and the fire never goes out.
Wow, I think you're spot on. And when I look at my preparation for UTMB in 2025, I had two blocks. I had one that was Australian winter, was Ultra Trail Australia through till mid-July or early July. And then I had the European lap, European training block. The amount of times I repped King Lake where I live, you know, that was my postal address. If you needed me, you
Yeah,
found me on that
knew where I was.
course. And then, you know, I went to Europe and I did a lap of the race course on my own, and I had bad weather. I had rain the whole way through. And then I went and did a lap with the Solomon team. We had people driving around, dropping us food, picking us up, doing anything, massage if we needed. And
So
I
good.
remember the race coming to be, and we had bad weather. And I just remember thinking, man, those laps in King Lake, that on my own lap of Mont Blanc, you know, that's where it was made. The lap that was really helped and hand delivered and I was babied through it, you know, it was kind of the cherry on a cake that was already baked. And so, yeah, I think that there's so much beauty in that, even though it
Yeah.
feels and it can look so unsexy, it probably is what's like the fundamental of any result that comes.
There's so many ways I could take this conversation. So many things I'm thinking. I want to talk about the Australian heat and how you're training now. I want to talk about how you get something for social media out of the mundane. You know, could you talk then about the constant reps and stuff? You've used your storytelling, your digital storytelling, as a real tool for inspiration for young people, but also just to sell the sport to a global audience, you know, whether that's through the sponsors channels, whether that's through your own conversations you're having, the high fives, the watermelon. There's so many elements of Lucy that have just grown organically. I hate, it's almost overused, the organic word, but you just delivered this story across the socials because it's your age range. It's what's your normal storytelling medium. So what do you love about the sport that happens behind Instagram in a way, the other side of it that we don't see?
I think I love 99% of what happens behind that doesn't
Mm.
go on Instagram. I think I actually was really struck this year with everyone's end of year recaps and just how beautiful and aesthetic and clearly the thought and the effort that's gone into these things that I was like, oh, I almost don't know what to post because I can't, like, that standard is
Keep
so
up to that standard,
high.
yeah.
Yeah. And I was to just like, here's 10 images. They're kind of blurry, but they're good memories.
Sweat
And
on the
like,
camera lens.
yeah. Whereas I was like, I think this person had a personal photographer for
Uh,
365 years of the year. I think what I love is like, find it, you know, what I've really tried to zoom in on is like the interactions with people and the conversations that I've had. And then how do I share that? You know,
yeah.
a good example of that is meeting those two young girls in line for the toilet at Four Peaks. They were said, oh, you're a huge inspiration. That was sweet. It was lovely. Then the way this race works, they left first as hike runners, and then I left last as an elite runner. And so I passed them on the trail. It was so beautiful. The mum sent me the imaging. She's like, oh, I took this really cool video. And I was like, this is incredible. And then they're like, yeah, we're heading home, driving to Jindabyne. And I was like, dude, I might be racing Ultra Trail Kosciuszko. I'll have to see you there. And then it just kind of like momentum grew. And she was like, well, I've pulled them out of school because you're racing on a Thursday. And I think it'd be really cool for them to come see you. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to promote taking your kid out of school. And
I
she was
do,
like,
definitely.
Lucy, they're making Christmas decorations, okay? It's not exam season. And No, it was just kind of like this story that I was like, "Oh, like, this is" everyone asks, "How do I get my kids into sport?" Everyone asks, like, "How do you know, like, how do you get into trail running?" and stuff like that, and I wanna share those things and to kinda take that behind the scenes and bring people into it of, like, this isn't staged, it's not set up. This is like her
Mm.
mom filmed this. I had the person because I was leading the race, film this, and it was just kind of this ongoing open dialogue of like, "Oh, you're here. I'm going here. Oh my god, you live here? Amazing. I need crew. Can you crew? Just hand me some water."
Although,
And
because people are also wowed by the ability to get to talk to the person. That's the lovely thing about socials. It's not about writing an email to their PR team or their PA and saying, "Can we have a chat? Can we do this?" It's about it's a deep dive straight into that person's their own personal inbox, and you can have that one-on-one conversation instantaneously. That's the beauty of that social channel.
spot on. Yeah. And this is like, I constantly remind myself, there is a negative out there. And as someone with a following of people, sometimes that can feel really loud to have
Mm,
negative and criticizing. And there's always has been, always will be that kind of commentary around anything you do. But there is also so much good. And there's so many, I've had so many girls this in the last week, right? And they've said, "I don't have a menstrual cycle. I want to be healthy coming into 2026." And I was like, my gosh, like you telling me this, you voicing this and telling someone else, that is so
it's the
strong of
start.
you.
Yeah.
And, like, how can I facilitate and help you move? I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to help, like, be someone to work with you, but I will help you and be there to hold your hand through this because the fact you've even acknowledged it
Opened
means
it.
we're
Yeah.
in a great
Yeah.
place.
The fact they've opened up to you is the doorway to opportunity. If you can sit behind the dark doors and mull things over in your head the whole time, you don't. That's where that cyber bullying, that cyber depression comes from. To be able to use someone like yourself, it is just a conversation, a trigger, a moment to go, hey, they recognise, they understand. Let's move forward. Let's do something about it. Yeah, it's a challenging scenario to be in, but one that I think comes with a lot of magnitude as well.
Yeah, and it's something that I've had to, I obviously so privileged and so lucky, but I'm also so aware of how incredibly important the dialogue and how you speak and what can be a trigger and and so I'm always kind of like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited about what your future will look like when you make these changes and like it's going to be so exciting, but you need to get a team on with you. Like,
Mm.
I got to where I am not purely on my own grit. I formed a team around me because I acknowledge and need that support. And so bringing me in, I love that. I'm happy to be here that you can just like have that girl to girl conversation with, but I'm not a medical expert and I will never pretend to be. And I had to very clearly draw that line this year where I became this beacon that where
Mental
people were
guru,
coming towards.
yes.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like I know my journey, but I don't know yours.
Yeah, and it's almost like a lawyer going out with a disclaimer first of all. This is impartial advice and it's only advice. It's not a legal statement, so don't come back to me if it goes wrong, please. How do you go from your first bit of tarmac into your first or your last bit of tarmac into your first bit of trail?
Honestly, I think right now the best thing to do is to go with a group. I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
safest thing. I think that run clubs and groups are booming at the moment, especially with the New Year's kind of momentum.
Yes.
I know where I live, that's kind of where I would always tell people is go to the Dandenongs, go to the King Lake with a group of people. Trail running is scary. And it is,
Yeah.
people will tell you, what about the snakes? And what if I get lost and there's no reception and there's lack of water? And those are all valid. And the fact you're thinking of those things makes me so happy because we
You've
can
done your due
mitigate that.
diligence. Yeah.
Yeah, you can wear a pack, you can carry water, you can tell people where you're going. You have a map, you make the maps offline. You can take food, you take a rain jacket, like you take a snake bandage, learn how to use the snake bandage. Like there's ways that we can kind of like make someone more and more comfortable. But I think that going with people who are a little bit more comfortable out there to show you the way and show you that it's not just full gas. We go slowly and we kind of pick our way through. And you kind of realize that it's a totally different experience. The most beautiful thing about running for me, and the reason 13 years in, I still love it and I still do it, is because I can run fast on the roads and I can run in circles on a track. I can run slowly in the mountains. can, it takes so many different forms. And I could go onto my watch and is it a trail run? Is it a run? Is it a bike ride? Like what sport am I doing?
Yeah.
And sport and running takes on all these different hats and different faces when you choose to pound pavement or to take it to the trails or to go into the mountains or to, it feels like a totally different experience. But people need to realize that and not
Yes.
try and take the road mentality to the trail because that's where we get issues.
And I think that difference for me has always been that the lack of time you spend looking at a watch when you're on the trail. When you're out, you're so concerned about or so spatially aware of your footfall, of what's coming up next. You're never really looking down at your feet. You're always looking 5 or 10 steps ahead. It's such a almost a zen space that people can find themselves in so much more doing that. When people are getting into it for the first time, what are some of the dangers? I mean, if that first week or that first 2 weeks, you suddenly think, oh my God, I'm a trail runner. I'm 5 days in. I've done 5 trail. What's the dangers of that sort of next month of trail training?
Well, I can probably assume that the trail world will suck you into thinking that the next step is an ultra
Yeah,
marathon
yeah.
because
This is why I was in. Yeah,
we're pretty good at being like, you touch trail, okay,
yeah.
minimum. And this is my biggest passion and my biggest peeve with the sport is that kind of just like the 50K is the new marathon or the 100K is the new marathon. It's normalized and these distances are just no big deal now. And I think that trail running and ultra trail running people have squashed it and gone, oh, ultra trail running, that's the sport. If I go trail, I go 50, I go 100K, and then I go 100 miles.
Mm,
And, now you can go way beyond that. But I think you've got to be so careful in any running journey, whether it's on road or it's on trail, is that just your body has to adapt. You have to take it slowly. Your running is not free on the body. There's a payment to pay. And the longer you go, you're risking being fatigued on uneven terrain. You're going into deficit with your food and your water and for women, your hormones and men, your hormones. You're paying a price each time, and you just have to be so aware on how it really is affecting you. I
yeah.
think especially people who they finish their run and that's beautiful, but then they go into a family house and then they go to work the day and, like stress plus rest equals growth. And the running stress that we add, even if it feels meditative and therapeutic, it still is stressful to the body. It's a
Yes.
state of go. You've pressed start on your watch. We're moving at a higher intensity. Our heart rate is beating, and that's awesome. But if you can't balance that with the rest and the food and the fuel and the recovery to absorb it, you're only going to go backwards. And then you're going to be so backwards that you don't enjoy the other parts of your life that are
Afterwards, yes.
you don't get to choose. So I always think that we just need to be so careful of realizing that 5Ks is a huge achievement. And it needs to be treated as such. It needs to be, you recover just as seriously as you would prepare for that run.
So when we take your history into account, we sort of wash all of that away just for a minute, because obviously you stepped up at a much higher rate when you were younger. To take that first step, was your 50 your first one in terms of a trail race? Did you go straight from the 100? Where did your graduation or your gradient go?
Yeah, so I was with dad a lot and we were doing a lot of 3-hour runs. So he was
Mm,
that old school mentality that to train for a road marathon, running over 3 hours was high risk injury, not worth your time, just like that's all you
gotcha.
needed to do. And so he took that for the 50K kind of training. And so we ran a lot of 3 hours and it was not running the whole time. It was a lot of hiking up the hills and running downhill. Then I entered into the Surf Coast 100. I kind of had this like minor moment of being like, I don't know, like 3 hours and then potentially however long this is going to take, that there's a big gap
It's a big
there.
jump. Yeah, massive jump.
So we entered into this really low key, fat ass, proper, not much to it 50K race called the Walhalla Wound Up. It's, there's no one there. You pretty much just sign your name. You finish, you sign your name. They hand you. I think it was 3 females in the race. I got second, and it was a spray painted toddler's shoe from the op shop that
I
they
love it.
spray
How
painted
good.
silver and put a little thing on it saying second place female. we finished that, and then it was kind of like, okay, if we can do 50, we can do 100. And for
Uh,
some reason that compartmentalized in my brain as a 14-year-old. I was like,
yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, halfway, like do that again. And dad was very certain in making that 50K feel really chilled. We stopped, we walked, we read signs of what the trees era was from, and it was a
Hmm.
history lesson. And then we lined up. But I think what's interesting from my journey is that back then there was the narrative of hitting the wall at the 30K mark in the
Yeah.
marathon. And people told me, "Oh, Lucy, that's like usually at about the 60, 70K point of the 100K." But I didn't have a watch. So I would run and I was just like dawdling
Right.
along. And dad remembers looking at his watch and it was about 60K. And he's like, "Oh, I'm starting to feel tired. She'll be momentarily just as tired."
Yeah.
And he was like, "It was incredible because I had no idea of time of
No
day,
reference.
of
Yeah.
distance
Yeah.
run. I was just living in that moment. I was like, this feels good. Oh, I might walk here. Oh, I think I need some
It's
Coke."
such a lesson for the future, isn't it? About how
Yeah,
much data we're trying to consume on the go and how much we are managing, our fuel, our nutrition, all that sort of stuff. It's almost like a step back into purity.
100%. I honestly like so much of those early years, there was no watch, there is no data.
Hmm.
And I think people think that's why they think I went from nothing to the 100. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, 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 no. Like I was logging time and miles in this body, not on my
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm able to do this. And I think that that's like, dad would always say, you'll have someone who's like had a big night out and they've agreed to run 100Ks and they just like sign up
Yes.
half
Yeah.
drunk.
I met a few of those. Yes.
And everyone's questioning me, someone who's been training super consistently, has been with my dad and growing and building and doing everything. And everyone's like, "Ah, I don't think she should do this." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
isn't that
but
strange? But
old
my
mate
body's
over there.
conditions for it. Yeah, I built myself up to do this. Two things in my mind that come out of that then. One is injury and avoiding of injury, and one is sort of comfort with the discomfort, because they're two of the key things that when I talk to other trail runners, they're always like, there's the hurt locker reference and how do you get in it and how do you be comfortable in that space? At that age, when you're in your younger years at doing that distance, the hurt locker hasn't been entered mentally, physically, in any way. So the first step into that world of what the fuck am I doing here? Everything is telling me to stop. Why haven't I just stopped? How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, and I think it's different when I was in the hurt pain cave, hurt locker,
Yeah,
whatever you wanna
yeah,
call it, with
yeah,
dad. I think it
yeah.
was very different with company because I was kinda like, "Well, we're in this together," It's a
Hmm.
totally different experience. Even when you're on a run that's really long and it gets hard, with someone, it's kinda like suffering together feels fine. But when I remembered when I did that same race by myself the following year and I ran at my
Yeah.
own pace and I put myself in a strong position early, which meant led to me being in the pain cave a lot
Consist.
earlier. And I was alone and it was kind of like, oh my god, like I have to get myself out of this. I put myself in this, and I chose this. I could have chosen to go slower and I could have chosen to be more reasonable, but this is Lucy on full display. And I just think that when you crack open that pain cave or that hurt locker, when you experience that, it's a really true character showing
Yeah.
moment, especially when you exit it or you cross that finish line and you look back and you're like, man, I didn't think I was ever getting out of that. And
Hmm.
here you are the next day sitting on the couch, the sun set, the sun rose, like life went on. Nobody really cares too much about
Yeah.
your day. And, I'm teammates with Courtney Dauwalter, who talks really beautifully and very descriptively about like she lines up at a race, construction vest on, she's going to that pain cave and she's mad redecorating. She's
Yeah,
like, I'm
I
going
love that.
there to make it a
Yeah.
bit bigger, to make it a little more comfortable for myself, put a couch in there, put some like a
And you
TV
can
with a
only do that from time spent in there to
yeah.
get that understanding of it and how you deal with it as a human.
Yeah, and I think if you can look at it as such a positive, like the way she spoke about it to me when I was young was so descriptive that I was like, I want to go to the pain cave. I want to,
Yeah.
I'm going to paint
Welcome.
myself
Now I'm
pink.
comfortable with this space that I'm in. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. And so inspiring people throughout the stages in life, dad and brothers, obviously big time in the younger days. And then people that took you under their wing. Has it always been about companies and sponsors, or it's been individuals that have just gone into the right space for the right time?
Oh, it's been people, and especially I would say the Aussie community in those formative young years,
Mm,
yeah, Pace Athletic, who took me under and gave me a lot of shoes, Wild Earth, who brought me up and I did a community run with them, and they gave me the platform and the opportunity to kind of like meet people. And even like locally where we lived, we would do like a group would take me out for night runs so that I
mm,
could run when in the winter when it was dark after school. And those people, they're not the Courtney DeWalters or the Emily Forsbergs or the Killian Jornets who have been huge parts of my career and so instrumental in
mm.
showing me how I want to show up as a professional athlete who is put on a pedestal. But it's the people that have kept me grounded and reminded me of like where I started, why I do this, the conversations, those run clubs, those run groups are just so fundamental to my growth as an athlete. And this
Yeah,
past, when I got home from UTMB, I raced the roller coaster run, Four Peaks, GPT, Ultra Trail Kosciuszko, and Mount Buller Sky Run. And they're all Aussie races that I usually come home from UTMB and I'm so tired. I
yeah.
don't get to participate. I don't really even go. And this year I went and I raced and it was the same people gathering still. And so many of them are like, oh, I remember when you were 15 and you came to and look where you are now. And it's like, look where we both are now. We're back at Mount Buller Sky Run. We're doing the same thing. This sport can be so healthy and it will be with you forever, especially when you've got the right people looking out for you and sharing it with you.
As an athlete, from the UTAs, the early ones, getting out to Cape Town, were you under a brand at that stage? Was it an invite to go out there, or were you just trying to find other ones in the calendar to give you that diversity of experience and knowledge?
By that point, I was under Solomon. So I was initially supported by Solomon Australia from 2013 pretty much to 2015. And then in
Hmm.
2016, 17, so I had finished up high school, I went overseas, raced, went to Annecy and signed a contract. And then
Yeah,
I was under
gotcha.
them.
Yeah, nice. And then so going from there, then the first sniff of getting to Chamonix and getting out there, it must have been on the radar of what I would love to get to one day. What was your first little inkling to get there? Was it just maybe you want to come and join as a supporter in the crew? How did you grow your journey towards Chamonix?
Well, it was my dad. He got into UTMB. So he got in 2014, I think it was. And it was like that was his everything. It was that and Western States were the
Yeah.
to do must do's, the twin pillars of our sport. And he went, and so I went with him and got to crew him around the race. And it took him 43 hours, cut off his 46. He had a great first half, probably too great, and then he really struggled the last half. And I will never forget watching my dad, just the evolution of this man over 2 days. I was absolutely exhausted just crewing and watching this guy. And I was like taking buses through the tunnel into Switzerland and Italy and feeding him and just trying to like keep him moving and get this thing done. But that's what brought me to Chamonix. And that's my first sniff of it.
Yeah.
And now I don't think I've really missed many summers back there.
It's such a pivotal destination for so many people who want to get to. It's obviously such a hard event to get to if you're not at the peak of the sport. And there are people out there that have, had multiple times at trying and never actually got there. I started the journey. I fell off the journey when the knee disappeared on me. I'm trying to get back on that journey. And for someone that is looking at that as their end goal, as I need to be there for that week in the town in France. How do you get someone that's not in the podium levels to be able to even think about starting that journey and getting through there? What do they got to do on a month by month basis to sort of get themselves equipped?
You just got to be consistent, you just got to log those miles and you just got to get out the door. I think like those mountains are so beautiful. They're so brutal. They're so hard. It doesn't matter who you are. Every time I get there, I'm reminded of how small I am, but also how strong I can be. I think that they really bring out the best in you. And that race specifically, the volunteers, the way it's run, the way the race week builds towards UTMB and the other races have gone on and you've got tired but just stoked people around ready to cheer and root for you around this mountain. In saying that, I think that there's a really, when I talked to my dad about UTMB, he said it was an incredible experience and one he would never change. But with the way that UTMB runs, you run straight into the night. then he had a whole day, then he had a whole night, and then he finished the next morning. He
Gee.
really wants to go back now and do the course over 6, 7 days and do it all in the daylight so that he can really appreciate the
Yeah.
grandness, because he feels like he missed so much. And I really agree, because when I saw him, he was in a conga line. I feel like he looked at this man's ass for 40 hours. I was like, "Did you see
It's like a
anything
Mount
else?"
Everest summit picture. Yeah.
And I think that, like, yeah, you got to just be aware that that can be your experience, but it is so worth it. The week that Chamonix, but what Chamonix becomes, the energy that
Mm,
sits in this valley, the grandness of the mountains, the achievement of getting into the race, getting to the start line,
yes.
getting to the finish line.
Staying
They're,
fit enough for the time to qualify is the
yeah,
big thing always, isn't it?
it is, and it's just those qualifiers, that relentless, it's like Western States. My dad waited 10 years to get into that. Every December was the lottery. Every December, I had to think of a different Christmas present to get him to forget about not getting in.
That's so cute.
And it was just kind of, yeah, but it's part of this sport, when you kind
Mm,
of have to work towards something and it builds and it builds. But don't make that the
yes, the end
the
game.
destination and that's the
Mm,
success. If you can like qualify at different races and do different things, and maybe you don't get drawn, maybe you don't get in, if you've just put grains and sands and tools into your tool belts of exciting experiences, it'll come when it comes. And if it doesn't come, I think that there's a lot of really cool races that are rising to be just what UTMB exemplifies.
does that fill you with, you've gone through the different race lengths in Chamonix there. When you finally get to say, okay, I'm going for the big one, I'm going for UTMB, there must be a sense of anxiety and nervousness that builds to that. But it doesn't matter how many people you're surrounded by, it doesn't matter how many coaches you've got, how many mentors, to get yourself up to that start line and have those deep breaths and control yourself. Is it hard to live in that moment? Are you so wrought with anxiety for the start line, or was Lucy just, give me the watermelon, let's rock?
No, dude, I haven't stood on that start line and not cried, because I've just been so bubbling with anxiety, excitement, anxiousness. Like,
Mm,
there's something about
all
being start
healthy human
yeah.
emotions.
And all coming from a place of respect of like big distance, big
Yes.
mountains, long day. Like, what is this going to throw at me? And I've been in this sport long enough to know that everything you thought that will go wrong won't go wrong, and everything else will. Like, you're going to get thrown things you don't know and don't have the answers to. And when you're sardined in that start line, in that chute,
Good
and you're
term.
listening to the music and people, the Europeans, they're very passionate, and
There's so
you
much
know
colour in Europe, isn't there?
there's
Where are all the black runners? There's colour on clothes. It's like, wow, how
certainly not
novel.
Melbourne.
No, it's definitely not Gold Coast.
And I think, like, I've never just been like, let's just get this on the road. Like,
Yeah.
please start the race. But I think, yeah, I have never signed up to this race and not been minorly stressed about the whole thing, because it
Mm,
is so big. And, I did the OCC, the 50K, the TDS when it was 120 Ks. And then I remember thinking, I will do UTMB twice. I will do it once to see it and to
yeah.
go around it not full gas, and I will just see where it shakes out, see how it feels, and then I will go back and I will race it. And that was always kind of my plan, was 2 times, once to see it, once to race it, and then I'll probably wipe my hands of it. Obviously, this was my 3rd
Probably.
year.
Yeah, I was going to say probably. And then last year happened. And then
Yeah,
things
and
got a
then
little bit better, didn't they, last year?
yeah, because
Yeah.
you're just like, "Oh, but if I did this right." And
Mm,
instead, yeah, that went well, but the thing that went well last time went wrong. So I was like, well, when
yeah.
I get them both right, who
And that
knows?
and that sort of tees you up in a way for, okay, well, the probably has become a, oh yeah, I'll just put another entry in. I'd like to give it another go. Does it really throw a different formula into the mix when you get a course change? When the weather plays the game, is the journey played out inside your head? Is the journey what you're going to be traveling over on the ground? Because obviously, when the storms come, when the weather really hits you hard, it seems like certain nations seem to really do well, and others go, oh my God, I'm coming from the hot conditions of Australia. Maybe I'm not. You sort of quash that whole concept last year.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest things that I was most proud of, was immediately when I saw the weather, I thought if it's not gonna be hot, I'm not gonna be competitive
Screwed. Yeah, yeah.
because that's always Western States. Any race, heat is it's the undoing of everyone around me, and it never concerns me. And that's from like a physiological, like my sweat rate and what I sweat. I've never cramped, touch wood.
Wow.
I'm born and been told you're born for the heat.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the UTMB weather, I immediately counted myself out. And my coach was just like, "You got to be kidding me, Lucy. It's 170, 180 Ks now. If you think that weather is going to be the thing that you're going to hang your hat on, like, come on, man." There's
Uh,
just like the list is long of what can go wrong for people. And I think I have learned through having some pretty tough experiences in mountains, and not even the big mountains, like Australian mountains where I've been caught out because I've been so blasé, that I run pretty risk adverse.
yeah.
I have really good kit. I'll take the heavier kit. I'm not about going light. I'm about going safe and going the
Mhm.
distance. And Ruth Croft was the classiest runner out there at UTMB. She was from the get go taking her pack off, putting her jacket on underneath the pack, taking her pack off, getting out different pair of gloves that were a different level of thickness, and just cycling through. And yet she got dropped a little bit, but then she caught back up and then ultimately ran away with it. And I
Yeah.
think, I was crewing at GPT this year, a race which you would expect to be hot, November, Victoria, and it wasn't. There was a storm rolled in, and I was crewing Caleb Olson, who'd won Western States this past year and was in the lead. And he put these pants on, and I was like, "Oh, dude, you're not going to need waterproof pants. You're going up Mount Abrupt, one of the big climbs." And he goes, "I'm not putting the pants on for the climb. I'm putting it on for the descent." And I was like,
Ah.
"You're so forward thinking, like
Yeah.
I'm always about like this moment, and you need to be those few steps ahead of like future Caleb will need the pants, and on the summit is not the time to put the pants
Big on.
on." And I was just like, oh, like it was just such a good reminder. And I think got away with UTMB this year. I would do it completely differently if I was to do it again in conditions like that. But on your
It's
point about the course change, I think it's so interesting because Ruth Croft and Tom Evans have both like asterisked their amazing performances with it wasn't the full course. I got to go back and win the full
yeah.
thing. And
It's
I
always a
was like,
disclaimer.
yeah, and I'm the same. Like every presentation, they're like, in for her first UTMB was 27 hours, her next one was 25, and her next one was 24. And I was like, yeah, but there was
Mm.
like for sure an
Like
hour
for
and a
like. Yes, yeah, like for like, they're not on par. So seeing that the winners this year obviously have not gone into it as their first hit on the ground. They've been there, they've built the experience, they've got the knowledge, they've done the bits like you've done. They learnt from other competitors who have given them little tweaks to their formula. How many tweaks is too many tweaks to make rather than just go back out and try and be better? I mean, that's the hard thing. You could try and learn so many things, and if one of them fails, does the formula fall apart? How does Lucy approach 2020?
Yeah, honestly, with the same.
Yeah.
Everything like from the first UTMB through to this past year, nothing, I haven't done anything differently. I've
Yeah.
just built on what I've been building on. And I think that this is one of the dangers of our sport right now is people are turning all the dials on the stove to full gas. You got heat training, you got carbs, masses, you've got altitude training, you've got so many things. And I'm like, dear God, just do the basics really well. Like,
Yeah.
just run, just eat enough and sleep,
Nice.
and I watch on with trepidation for people because if I spoke to Tom and I spoke to Ruth, and both of them, they're not doing one percenters, they're doing the big percents really strongly and just
Yeah.
consistently. And so I don't plan to change a whole lot. I think what I did and how I prepared, I think the one thing I could work on would be that attitude, that pre-race of being like, oh, it's not going to be my day, and just
Yeah.
being like, it could be anyone's day. And that
Which gives you
includes
an
you.
extra,
You're on the start line.
yeah, which gives you an extra 5% from the get go, doesn't it? And really
Yeah.
starts you off. You're low in that race. Was it the fall? Was it a mental downhill that you took and you couldn't get yourself back up? Was it stomach? What was your low point this year, last year? I keep saying.
Yeah, yeah, no. Yeah, it kind of started with the fall, and then again, it kind of like made my attitude was bad, right? Like when
Mm.
you're out in these mountains, it was midnight, it was snowing, I was laying face down on the ground. I was like, did I just
Ideal
crack my
conditions.
Yeah, yeah, it was really honestly great sport, super healthy. And I was just like, have I just cracked my kneecap into a million pieces? I was with this French man who didn't understand that I was in pain. And he was just kind of like being like, Ali, Ali, Ali. And I was like, dude, I'm trying to go,
Can't go
man.
anywhere. Yeah.
And I just remember, like, I've always been told you have two things you can control in these races, the effort and the attitude. And I was
Yeah.
like, I kind of dropped both of the balls. I was like, this is over. I'm going to limp my way to Courmayeur. My crew is there, and that's going to be day done. And it was in those moments where I kind of was like, okay, Lucy, like, is it hurting? Is it broken? Is it getting worse? Can you move? Yes, you can. Put some food in. Like, you tripped because you didn't eat in the cold because it was hard to get it
Right.
out. Or,
Yeah.
you know, you just need some carbs in you and you'll make some better decisions. Carbs and caffeine. Come back to your North Stars of life. And yeah, and I think that that was like a low moment. It was just kind of probably preceding it, not eating, being fatigued, descending in the snow, Mother Nature giving me a slap in the face to wake
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and then kind of being like, okay. And I just remember coming into the checkpoint and Ryan Sands was crewing me, obviously a legend of the sport. And
Mm.
he was like, looks pretty fine. I think we're fine. I'll see you at the next checkpoint. You
With
know,
that
he just did,
awesome Safa accent, just cast it
yeah.
off. Doesn't matter.
Oh,
Toughen
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Sounded sexy as. He was just like, I'll see you at the next one. And he didn't play it up. He didn't keep the narrative going. He was just like, "You seem to be moving pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. Like, we'll have the Solomon physio at the next one. They can look. But as far as what you can control right now, that's in the past. Now
And
you've
get
got
on
to
with
get
it.
your stomach and, you know, Saturday daybreak is about to come. Life will feel easier once you've got some
Yeah.
sunlight in your eyes."
To go from the low to the high, I suppose one of them must be, and this is coming from someone I've only got to my 130 out of a miler. I pulled out of that one. But when you get to the moment where you realize that you're actually going to get yourself to the end is a big tick. When you realize you're going to get yourself down that big, beautiful finish chute, and when you realize you're higher up in your ranking than you were last year, which of those is sort of the moment of, fuck yeah?
Oh man, I feel like it's funny because one of the highest of highs was the top of Flagere, which from there you have 7 kilometer descent to the finish.
Mm,
So I say if you get there, most likely you're getting to that finish line.
yeah.
But in that space of that, I got passed by two girls that felt like they were doing a different sport to me because they came flying down this downhill. But on the other side of that, I just passed Courtney DeWalter, who I've
Yes.
never passed. I've always been passed by. And that was like probably one of the most beautiful moments of my career because the respect that she had and the attitude of someone who was clearly down and out.
She could have given up so many kilometers before, couldn't she? But that was a
And
real
no one would have
story to
said a
people.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the story for people. It's like, just grit your teeth, get back in decorating that pain cave and
Yeah.
smash it, girl.
Yeah. It was, you know, when I ran Western States the year I came third and she won and she came past me, I'd been leading for 90 Ks and she came past me and she tapped me on the bum and she said, "Come on, let's get this train out of this canyon." And I
No.
said, "Mate, this carriage is fucking parked. Like, I am done." And we laughed and she went on and had her day. And then she came into that checkpoint and actually like went to my dad before her crew and said, "Lucy needs to eat, she needs to drink, she needs to cool down. She's about 2 Ks back from me." So like all
Brilliant.
class to do that. My
Yeah.
dad was just like starry-eyed, thinking Courtney was talking, took none of it in. But then when I passed her at UTMB, you know, I tapped her on the bum and I was like, "Come on, let's get this train up to Flagere." And she was like,
Nice.
"Dude, I am the caboose and I am sitting down. Like, I am done." And it was just this moment of like, man, this sport is wild, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's in Olympic Valley in the canyons of Western States or it's the mountaintops of UTMB, you know, you are at the mercy of the weather, the race, your body, your brain. And yet she just gave me such an incredible insight to being like, I want to be like that. In my lowest moment, I want that kind of respect and attitude.
It's
So
lovely
that
that you
was
can sort
probably
of
one of the
reciprocate
highs.
it to each other. You know, you've gone through that journey of, you need to find those people that it can just give you your stability, your mental drive back when you're at your low. It's a simple throwaway line for them, but for you, it means absolutely everything. It pulls you off the floor.
100%. Yeah, that was that whole section of just being like, I'm going to complete it. I'm going to be the top 10. I'm going to be I thought it was going to be fifth, and I was absolutely ecstatic. I've obviously
Oh,
then
come
finished
on, Lucy.
seventh.
We were giving it that. Don't worry.
Oh man, I had no knee to land on for that downhill. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then coming through town, and there's not much I remember of that last bit, but there's faces in the crowd of some Aussies that were out there and had really tough days, but came to see me finish. And I know that would have been hard for them to be at the finish line having not crossed it themselves. But yeah, just that feeling of I beat the sun down, so everyone's out having
Yes.
dinner and just chilling
Yeah.
out, and I was
And it's at
like,
its peak, isn't it? Then it's when the festival atmosphere is really maxed out. To go through with that number of people, you're doing a high 5,000 high fives on the
oh
way
yeah.
through. There's so much support through that shoot. I mean, you can feel it even just sitting watching it live on YouTube. You can feel the buzz there. It must be just such a beautiful moment to get across the line, be surrounded by. You've got the media pack, you've got the organisers, you've got the family, and the big breath of Christ, I did it yet again.
Yeah, and like for me, I came across the finish line. I had my brother and his wife who were on their honeymoon who'd come out, and I had Solomon, and they're very French proud and UTMB strong. And so it was just like one of those finish lines. I remember I sat straight down on the gutter because of my knee, and I was just like, this is so beautiful, but it's also just like absolutely brutal. I don't know if I want to cry, vomit, throw up, or sleep.
It's
I'll
so
probably do
difficult
all of
because
them.
I wish I had another. I wish I could stop the clock because there's so much I want to talk about. Gear. Wild Earth are going to berate me because I'm going to be talking about gear as well. However, I want to talk about the transition then into an off training. So not just pounding the legs, but going into the idea of Ironman. That beautiful holistic view of swimming and then riding a bike and then running, to go and do those three different disciplines. It must be nice to rest up the body, but take on some other elements of it. Why did you do it? Was it just as a training change? Was it because there was the offer and opportunity of Ironman?
No, it was mostly because, we just had COVID. The races in Australia, none of them were like speaking to me. I'd done a lot of them. I didn't really feel like chasing my shadow and returning to them. Ironman was kind of like a one and done style thing. It was something I wanted to do someday, but with a professional contract, Solomon's not super stoked about me deciding if I wanted to do an Ironman. And so it fell into like a bit of a time where I had a bit more flexibility. And I think because like I said, the burnout from the running, it just took the focus off it because it wasn't the thing I needed to focus on. I didn't know how to swim sets or swim that far, and I'd never clipped in on a bike. I had
Right.
big
Wow.
lessons ahead of me. And so, I kind of became a student again. And that's what I think now that I've changed my mindset in running, where I feel like I'm a sponge again and I can talk to Ruth's and Tom and Caleb's and then talk to my dad and yourself, and I can learn from people and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's something I'll, think about and take on board or leave. That attitude is what triathlon retaught me, was that I
Yeah.
needed the community. I needed people to help me. I needed to fall off my bike. I needed to bonk in a swim. I needed to do all of those things to feel like a student again and be like, you don't have to have the answers, Lucy. In fact, you don't have the answers and nobody does.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and then being in a community that didn't know me and they didn't really care.
That's
They were kind of like, oh, you run
yes.
ultras? That's weird. But like,
Yeah.
endurance
And it's
sports.
only ultras. Oh, you're only a runner. Is it? Does
Yeah.
I mean, that feels like if people that go out there and do, there's a biathlon, there's a triathlon, then there's the duathlons, and there's so many different elements you could almost go and do. Going in there with just your qualification in the running world, almost sort of you're under par for everything. But
Oh,
to go in there and then turn it around and get the training and get the results, that's a huge, huge call.
yeah, totally. And I think everyone was like, oh, your marathon time must be super impressive. And I was like, it's kind of at the start of like a 50K.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. I'm warming up by then.
yeah, but in the same breath, I think that the people that I've, and I still connect with and still ride with and absolutely adore, what I've learned through trail running and ultra running, my mentality is so strong and steadfast for endurance hours. An Ironman, all my Ironmans have taken me between 10 and 10 and a half hours. And that is a short day in ultra running, and for
Absolutely.
other people in triathlon, that's a long, professionals especially, that's long. And
Uh,
so I think there was so much give and take that it felt so healthy. It felt like, oh, I can bring something to this. It's not directly this, but then they could help me and kind of like, it feels like you live three lives in triathlon. You're a different animal, different way of moving each time. But I say, the quote for ultra running is that you live life in a day in an ultra. And I think that that's just as true, but you're doing the same thing. So you've got to find ways to break it up and to feel like you're stepping into a new skin, new shoes, and a new era of that same race that same day.
Very similar sort of finish shoot vibes to the Ironman and the UTMB. Very different communities. Sort of, I know that I'm not going to ask you to choose sides on this one, but it just must feel like two big families that are supportive of everybody that gets over there. Whether you're the 8-hour athlete, the elite athlete, or whether you're coming over in 26, 27 hours, it's just must be beautiful being in those two communities.
Incredible. And I feel so blessed that I did UTMB followed by Kona and then UTMB followed by Nice. What a privilege to see the pinnacle of trail running and then the world championships and the pinnacle of triathlon. And I think I was always UTMB is obviously my focus. That's my job. That's my playground.
Yeah.
And then I went to Ironman and I got to be one of the people who, I saw Lucy Barkley and the pro female triathletes. And I would just, I was one of the
In
age
awe at
groupers
them,
that was
yeah.
in awe. And that's how people look at me at UTMB. And so I
Yeah.
think it just reminded me of man, sport is sick. And what it brings out in people, how it brings people together, that finish line shoot, that respect from whether you're a 46-hour UTMB finisher or a 24-hour, I don't know what the cutoff is, 18-hour Ironman finisher, we all traversed this massive journey. And I just love it. The day after UTMB, where everyone's hobbling around
Hobbling
and
around, yeah.
everyone's, in
Downstairs
line
backwards.
for Poco Loco burger and quick bread and cheese fix. And then in at the Ironman and they're all hobbling and there's the awards and everything.
Yes.
That feeling of just everyone's just and so just yeah, there's just something about it that I can't put my finger on, but I feel so lucky to have got the experience it so many times.
We haven't gone towards gear. However, I'm going to ask a couple of them. Obviously, brands like Salomon and Hoka, they're all trying to push the boundaries of what is possible in terms of protecting the athlete, but also pushing the athlete to go faster or further. Technology, materials, all things evolve and change. Are you someone who's found your shoe that you love and you stick with it? Or are you someone that always is going, hey, it's got carbon this and fiber optic this and I can do this and let's try this one? What do you do? Are you a traditionalist or do you want to keep driving things forward?
No, I'm a basics done well girl and I am a Genesis forever. Solomon brought out the Ultra Glide, which was built for UTMB, and they were like, we'd love everyone in it. And I was like, I won't be, because I think it's what I put every step is going to be using this piece of equipment. And I have so much trust and mentally it takes all guesswork out for me. So, I've been with Solomon for, 12, 13 years. And from the days of the S-Lab, very minimal shoe. And I run best in that. My foot is shaped to Solomon at this point. So I'm a traditionalist.
I think from the age you started, Solomon has shaped your foot, I would probably say. It's the probably way it is. You can't get anything else now. You've probably got the imprint of Solomon underneath your arch, don't you? It's the way it's gone. You also drive an Ineos Grenadier, wonderful machine. I have one in the shed as well. How much fun are they for taking around the hills, hey?
Oh, man. I mean, what that car has opened up to me in access is incredible. Yeah, I'm very, very lucky and very cool. I think it's the sexiest looking car. Okay.
What have you got lined up? What's the first 6 months of the year look like?
So I head to France in 10 days for a Solomon re-sign. So I'm really stoked to stick with Solomon, have them continuing to be the shape of my foot. Yeah. And then my sole focus at the moment is Tarawera to try and get a golden ticket back to Western States. So I'm all in on trying to run 100 kilometers as fast as I can because it is definitely a running 100K rather than a walking with a slice of pizza up Mont Blanc kind of 100K.
Yeah, I think if we see you with a slice of pizza in your hand walking up Mont Blanc, well, there'll be some feedback on the YouTube channel. I reckon there'll be a lot of comments. She's not taking it seriously this year. Aspirations for UTMB, is it if you can get on the standard course, is it just to get yourself quicker against yourself? Is that what you always try and do?
Well, if I got into Western States, I probably would be looking at doing CCC or something else there and letting UTMB sit for a bit. I do think doing a fourth year of the same race is starting to get a little bit scary territory for comparison. But of course, I see there's a couple of hours worth of issues that I had this year that I would like to see wiped off. I'd like to see an under 24-hour time for sure.
Nice. Well, I can tell you now, on behalf of the whole Wild Earth community, everyone that listens to Wild Chats, the people that you see when you come and do the drop-ins at the store and stuff, it's epic to have someone at the pinnacle of the sport who is young, bubbly, and full of life and full of the vitality that inspires other people. So, Lucy, thank you so much for doing everything you do. It really is an incredible journey that we've followed. I will continue to follow it as very well. I'm just going to have to wrap it because we've come to 1 hour 15. Anything that you would like to say that is going to inspire that sofa surfer to get off and get on their trail shoes?
Oh man, I mean, it's the one thing that sounds cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. And it's just the first step is the hardest, like get out the door, put the shoes on. I have the 10-minute rule that I will do when I'm really, really struggling. And I will do 10 minutes out. And if I don't feel it after 10 minutes, then I'll do 10 minutes back. And it's a 20-minute run, which is better than nothing. But usually after
Absolutely.
10 minutes, you feel the sun on your skin, the wind in the air, and you sweat, you start to loosen up and warm up for the whole thing. And I think you'll find you'll go further than you think.
The 10-minute, I like the 10-minute out and the 10-minute back. That's a good theory when you're feeling no motivation whatsoever. One thing to say as well, where do we follow all of the journeys? I mean, it's an Insta journey very much. Are you a TikToker? What do you do? Where's your main portals?
I'm certainly not a TikToker.
No.
Instagram's the best one. Everything from
Yeah.
Instagram goes to Facebook. So if you're not Instagram, it's just rinse repeat over there. And then if you want to follow like the day-to-day Stravas, it's all open and public for people to look at and come to their own.
And something to aim for. Never will I get that number of kilometers in a week, but I can always try. Thank you, Lucy, so much. If you love this chat, hit follow and share it with someone who needs a little adventure in their life. If you're looking to gear yourself and get some fuel for your next great idea, whether it's doing the UTMB, whether it's your first Ironman, or whether it's just taking the kids out for a weekend camping, check out wildearth.com.au. And we'll see you next time for more wild stories from the trail, the road, and the edge of the map. Go get them, Lucy.
Thanks, Ben.